So welcome to Interconnectedness of Self-Care and Work. And this is where we're going to be talking about how self-care can positively impact your career and lead to increased motivation, creativity, and fulfillment. Besides having a chat about this, we'll be giving away our guest, Taylor Elise Morrison's new book, Inner Workouts. So please be sure to stick around for that. And we will have a Q&A where we encourage you to ask questions and share your thoughts. So today's webinar is brought to you by Vida. If you haven't heard of us, we are a coaching company based in Chicago, and our coaches are located throughout the country. We primarily help our clients thrive in their careers, life, and leadership work through our use of proprietary e-coaching technology and our proven career transition process. We help our clients love their lives, which is the meaning of our name. So my name is Peggy Wu, and I am a life and career coach with Vida. I'm also a yoga teacher and a finance and accounting consultant. I am an ex-corporate professional turned lifestyle entrepreneur. I've been introducing myself this way. And I remember when I was climbing the corporate ladder, I thought self-care meant binge watching shows after a 12-hour workday or getting a massage, going shopping on the weekends. Although these activities were enjoyable, I did not get any relief from burnout and stress after repeating these self-care behaviors. And I wonder if this resonates with any of you. So I later learned that self-care can be in many forms. It's more than just taking a break, more than getting a massage. It's about being proactive in meeting your own needs. And also self-care is about advocating for yourself, speaking up, and also building that support system to help you stay accountable to your commitments to yourself. So when it comes to talking about self-care, our guest today is an expert on this topic. And so we're in for a treat. I want to tell everyone about Taylor Elise Morrison, the founder and author of Inner Workouts. Inner Workouts' mission is to provide a self-care support system and create products and experiences that help clients do the inner work. Also, don't forget, we will be giving away a copy of Taylor's book, Inner Workouts, in the end. So please stay and see if you are the lucky winner. So now, without further delay, let's welcome Taylor. Hi, Taylor.
Hey, Peggy. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me.
So good to have you here, Taylor. And is there anything that you wish people to know about you? And like anytime when you introduce yourself, what is something that you wish people know?
Yeah. One of the first things that I always want to tell people is that I'm not naturally good at self-care. I'm not naturally like a Zen, calm person. I really come to this work because I needed it, because I've burned myself out more times than I would like to admit. So that's one thing I like to tell people right off the bat.
So what's your definition of self-care?
Yeah, the definition that I use in the book and with the company Inner Workout is that self-care is listening within and responding in the most loving way possible. And that was a pretty big shift for me to stop seeing self-care as this item on my to-do list. And let's be honest, it often was like the item on my to-do list that got pushed to the bottom of my list. I started seeing it as a conversation. I'm always talking to myself. I'm listening to hear what's going on, whether that's noticing what's happening in my body or noticing an emotion that's surfacing, and then finding the most loving way that I can respond.
I love that. So I'm curious about your take between self-care and work. Because when it comes to work, it's about serving someone else's needs. So how do you exercise self-care at work?
I love this question. So I feel like a lot of times we see both as individuals and even organizations too. They see self-care as this conversation that we have, this thing that we're doing outside of work, as an extracurricular, if it is offered at work, or this thing that you do on the weekends, almost as a treat for being done with your work. And what is so much more useful, what I find for me and for the people that I work with, is to view self-care as something that can be infused throughout your day at work. So if we go back to that definition that I use of listening within and responding in the most loving way possible, you can do that throughout the day at work. You can notice, oh, I have a presentation in 30 minutes and I'm feeling super anxious. I'm going to take 1 minute right now to do some deep breathing. Or I got some feedback and I'm kind of reeling from that. What is the most loving thing that I could do for myself? It's set up some time with my mentor so that they can give me an objective perspective and also maybe tell me about a time when they received feedback and how they integrated it. So those are all acts of care and acts of self-care. And I find that the way that I used to think of self-care is kind of the treat yourself model of self-care. It's like, well, I can't in the middle of the day get a manicure, but I can ask myself, what's going on? What do I need? And how can I respond with love?
Hmm. You know, most of us understand that it's important to take care of ourselves, but we really just don't have time. Have you heard of that? People will tell you, like what you mentioned earlier, maybe we can get into the habit of putting self-care on our calendar, on our to-do list, but that always gets pushed down to the bottom because we simply just don't have enough time. So how do we take care of ourselves even when we don't feel we have enough time? Any idea
Yeah.
or advice?
This is something that gets me really passionate because I hear that all the time. And honestly, it makes me sad because a lot of times when people are saying they don't have time, it's really that they're saying, I feel like I don't have enough time to do self-care the quote unquote right way. So I'm not going to do anything for myself. So it's this shift that I would encourage people to make instead of being like, I can only be good at self-care, which what is it even to be good at self-care if I'm doing this task for 10 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour? Shift into thinking, how can I use the time that is available to me? One of my favorite practices that I've started incorporating, I learned this when I was completing a mindfulness and meditation teacher training, was a 1-minute meditation. You spend the first 20 seconds adjusting your posture, because a lot of us, the longer we work, the more we start being hunched over our computers. So you spend the first 20 seconds, you adjust your posture. The next 20 seconds, you do some breathing. You just bring awareness to your breath. You don't even have to do anything fancy. And then the final 20 seconds, you do a quick body scan. I've done this. Takes a minute and you tend to feel better. You feel more grounded in the moment. You feel more present in your body. And again, that's in 60 seconds. There are so many little things that we can do with the pockets of time that we have available to us that can help us feel more cared for, more connected. And I see a lot of people saying, well, I can't do it the way that I saw Gwyneth Paltrow say that she does it, or I can't do it the way that this guru who lives in an ashram does it. So I'm just not going to do it at all. And I think that does a big disservice to us.
You're absolutely right. The all or nothing mentality. If I can't get a full 30-minute workout, then I'm not going to do it. It's almost like 10 minutes is not good enough. 5 minutes is not good enough. It has to be all that. But you're right. Maybe we can reframe and look at it from a different angle. Even if you only if you have 1 minute, 1 minute counts. 1 minute is better than 0 minutes. So Taylor, let me know if I'm putting you on the spot because I really like the 1 minute method. Are you comfortable doing this with us?
Yeah, let's do it.
let's do it. Since we're on the topic, okay, let's do it.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to pull up a timer just because honestly, I'm like, what is 20 seconds? Normally when I do it, I'm just like, oh yeah, this feels about right. Sometimes it ends up being longer, but I'll put a timer so I can be approximately. So everyone who's joining us, try and get a little comfortable in your seat, and then I'll guide us through. So our first 20 seconds. Actually, before even that, I like to invite people to look over their shoulders before they start. Just look around your room. This is a way to calm your parasympathetic nervous system and just let you know, like, hey, there's not a saber-toothed tiger there. You're safe. You're relaxed. It's okay. And then from there, if you feel comfortable, you can close your eyes. And if that doesn't feel comfortable, just gaze just past the tip of your nose. And the first thing I want you to do is to see if you can find some extra length in your spine. Imagine that there is a string from the crown of your head to the ceiling, and someone is just slightly tugging on it. And all of a sudden, you're a quarter inch, maybe even half inch taller. Draw your shoulders up to your ears, exaggerating what we do when we get stressed out, and let your shoulders roll down your back. Open your chest. And now plant both feet on the ground if they aren't planted already, and bring your awareness to your breath. Notice the cool air go in through your nostrils and how it's slightly warmer as the air goes out. And you don't need to do anything here, just follow the in and the out of your breath. Maybe having a moment of gratitude for the fact that your body does this for you, breathes in and out without you having to do anything. Hold your awareness for a couple more breaths. And then bring your awareness to your feet. See if you can feel them on the ground, up to your ankles, your shins and calves, your knees, your quads and hamstrings, your hips, your low belly and low back, your heart space and upper back, your shoulders, your neck, your jaw. Relax your jaw, your eyes and all the tiny muscles around your eyes, and finally to the crown of your head. Take one more breath here, and when you're ready, open your eyes. I got too into that. That was way more than a minute. It was about 2.5 minutes. But I'm curious in the chat, how are folks feeling after doing that?
Yeah.
2.5 minutes is still pretty short in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, relaxing, refreshed, calm, wonderful, taller. I like that. Relax, quick improvement, grounded. Good. I'm glad that people feel that this is really helpful. I love it. It's such a quick way to reset. This is almost like I mean, if you still watch TV with commercials, that's like the commercial, right? Time. And look how much you can do. Good. All right. So thank you so much, Taylor, for doing that for us. And now I want to ask you this question. I kind of mentioned it in the beginning. Is there such thing as the wrong type of self-care? I mentioned earlier that I love getting a massage. I used to love shopping. I still do, but I try to be more mindful of it. I want to correct myself. I don't think they're necessarily wrong. It's just if we're not feeling the benefit after doing certain activities, or I also mentioned binge watch, shows. I still do. If we're looking for ways to take better care of ourselves, but we don't feel much benefit after doing something, then does that mean we're not doing something right?
That's a great question. So a couple ways to approach that. The first is when sometimes we're doing things that are really surface level, and it's not wrong, it's not bad. Like I talk in the book about how I do love getting massages. I do love taking bubble baths. And I'm also really aware that a lot of the ways that society talks about caring for ourselves tends to be about spending money. And that's not always what's going to be the most useful for us. So sometimes there are things that I like to think of as like effective and ineffective. There are things that we do that are maybe like a quick dopamine rush that aren't as effective for us. One of the core frameworks for the work that I do at Inner Workout, and it's what the book is built around, are 5 dimensions of well-being. They're inspired by this yogic concept called the koshas. And so the idea is that there's a lot of aspects of ourselves to care for. And I know when I started my self-care journey, I almost exclusively focused on my physical body, on the physical dimension of well-being, but there might be another part of me that needed care. So the massage might feel really good in the moment, but I still might feel stressed out and overwhelmed because there was a different part of me that needed to be cared for. So to go over those 5 dimensions, the first is the physical dimension, and I'll zoom out for a second. So there's 5 dimensions and then each has sub-dimensions. I'll stay high level with the 5 dimensions. So there's the physical dimension of well-being that looks at the conversation you're having with your body. Your body is talking to you. You're also talking to your body when you look in the mirror. So it's looking at what is the quality and the supportiveness of that conversation you're having with your physical body. Then there's the energetic dimension of well-being, which looks at your breath. There are more and less supportive ways for us to use our breath to regulate our energy to support us. And then there's also energy zones, which we talk about. The quick and dirty one, that example that I always use is like, we've all had people that we have a conversation with and we end the conversation feeling so energized and we're like, I could just run up a mountain right now. And we've experienced the opposite, where we talk to someone and we just feel like we got hit by a bus. Those things are happening. Those shifts of energy are happening throughout our day. And so the energetic zone is about, okay, how are we more mindful of the way that energy is moving throughout our life? Then there's the mental and emotional dimension, which looks at how we're using our brains, what we're putting into our brains. It looks at what's coming out of our brains in the form of thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And then that's all supported by sleep. Because yes, sleep does affect how we feel physically, but it also affects our cognition, our ability to think and to interact with others in a way that's productive. Then we have the wisdom dimension. And the wisdom dimension is all about accessing our power in the present moment. So being tuned into our inner wisdom, being focused and present, and taking aligned action. It's one thing to hear from yourself and to know, ooh, this is the right path for me. It's quite something different to make that shift or to take the steps in alignment with what you know to be true from your inner wisdom. And then the last dimension is bliss, which is all about being connected to yourself, to communities, and to something bigger than you, whatever that looks like for you. So to go back to your original question, Peggy, it can be, if you're having something going on, let's say in the mental and emotional dimension, where you are feeling really angry or you're feeling really sad, or even like you're feeling joy that you haven't allowed yourself to express. Getting that massage, which treats your physical dimension, might, again, feel good, but might be ineffective because really what needs care is that mental and emotional dimension.
I love that. So how do people find out which dimension needs more attention?
Yeah. So one way is, shameless plug, I built an assessment called the Take Care assessment. It's free. It's 75 questions that you can take, and it gives you a PDF report based on your results that has 3 practices that are a great starting point for you, again, based on how you answered the questions. So that's a resource for you. But the broader thing is really starting to be in conversation with yourself. And so to notice, for me, one of the biggest things about the 5 dimensions was to have language for myself and to notice, okay, something's going on in the mental and emotional dimension. I'm feeling a little off right now, or I'm feeling disconnected. That might be a place to focus on the bliss dimension. So for you, it might just be being observant of what's happening and then starting to connect it to and naming what dimension or subdimension it might be connected to. So much of the work that I do comes back to helping people become more aware of the conversation that's already happening internally.
I love it. By the way, I can't help noticing people are asking about where can they take the assessments. And I think Maggie sent a link and shared a link with everybody. So thank you, Maggie. And Taylor, maybe you might want to just click on that link really quick and to verify, make sure that's the right link, or we can send one out later with our email.
I just looked. Yep, that's the right link. Thank you, Maggie.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's it.
Good. So I remember in your book, you mentioned, you actually shared your assessment with the reader. And so tell us, how did you come up with that idea about the 5 dimension? And how did you create the self-care, the take care assessment?
Yeah.
So tell us more about that.
The 5 dimensions came from when I was doing a yoga teacher training, and they talked about this concept of the koshas. And I was like, oh, that's why sometimes I take care of myself, but it doesn't feel like care. I'm still feeling like something's off. And so I really expanded on that and added subdimensions. And the assessment came from looking at some of the research or what we know about, for example, for the sleep subdimension, what are some things that we know about like the quality of sleep? Or for some of it was like looking back at like for the energy zones, for example, it's looking back at more ancient texts and seeing, okay, how do they talk about this and conceptualize this? So it's really a meeting of Eastern philosophy and Western psychology. One of my colleagues, Erin Doppelt, she talks about that a lot in her work. And I love assessments. So I made it at the beginning of the pandemic because when I started Inner Workout, it was a completely different company. And a lot of what I was planning to do was in person. We were live for 6 months before the pandemic hit. And all of a sudden, people were needing self-care. Self-care was one of the most searched terms in 2020. And the way I had conceptualized to support people in learning how to listen within and respond with love wasn't working anymore. So an assessment had been something that was like, oh, that's a someday thing. And then pandemic messed with everyone's sense of time. So it became oh, this is a right now thing.
So when you hear people say, I don't have time for self-care, or self-care feels selfish because, let's say, since, we just had Mother's Day, I hear my friends talk about this all the time. How do I have time for self-care when I have a 2-year-old?
Yeah.
How do I have time for self-care if laundry needs to be done? My family needs clean clothes. So what do you say to them, and how do you help them? I mean, it's a real problem if people need to take care of someone else because they're caretakers. And how do they take care of themselves?
I love that question. And I think there's so much that goes into people feeling like self-care is selfish. That's like societal conditioning. It could be your upbringing. It could be messages that you grew up hearing from spiritual communities. It can come from a lot of places. And there are like a couple types of people that I'm always thinking of when we create things for inner workout. I think of this archetype of the self-aware overachiever who kind of knows all the frameworks and knows that they should be taking care of themselves, but their overachiever tendencies that gets in the way of them caring for themselves. And then there's also this strong friend archetype. And we're doing more actually in our next season of our podcast, talking about 3 types of strong friends: the caretaking strong friend, the picture perfect strong friend, and the intellectual strong friend. And what happens when we lean into these strong friend archetypes is that essentially we are looking for security and safety. We want to be needed, or we want to be seen as smart, or we want to be seen as the person who has it all together. And so we let that desire, how do I want to say this? We're looking for connection. And the way that we're choosing to connect, by doing more, by serving more, by putting other people's needs in front of us, actually isn't giving us the opportunity to truly connect to people. It's actually putting a barrier between us. So the reason that I say that aside is because when we think about self-care being selfish, whenever I talk to people about this, I would say 9 times out of 10, if we were talking to them about their best friend or their mom or someone else, would it be selfish for them to take 30 minutes to do this? No, of course not. In fact, oftentimes this person is giving everyone else advice to take care of themselves, but they don't feel like they deserve it. So there are a few angles that we could take with this. I think one is a sustainability angle. If you really want to care for your kids, if you really want to be able to make an impact with your work for the long term, you have to change your mindset and your paradigm around self-care. You have to, because you're going to burn out if you never take time to fill yourself back up. So that's one angle that you can look at it at. The other is really doing some, no pun intended, inner work on worth and deserving. What is going on beneath the surface where you feel like you're not worthy? Because a lot of times it's not people wanting extravagant things. It's not like you're saying you're trying to jet off to the Maldives. It's like, I'm trying to take 30 minutes so that I can read a book that I enjoy. So I would invite people to do some either self-reflection or work with a coach or a therapist to get to the root of, why do I not feel like I'm worthy of these things?
Taylor, these are great points. And while you were talking, I thought of another perspective, because I heard this from my clients before. Self-care is selfish, not because they don't want to do self-care for themselves, but because they've witnessed someone who always put their own needs first. So we feel, wow, that person is so selfish. I will never want to be like that person. And this person could be someone maybe really close to them. Maybe this person made others feel that they're less important. So these people who are witnessing this so-called put myself as a priority behavior as simply not acceptable. I don't know
That's
if you heard of
interesting.
something like that.
I can give like a similar but slightly different. And it's funny, my husband's working in the other room, but he's always like, I never listen when you're on a call. Meanwhile, I'm such an eavesdropper. So if there's a call, then is within earshot, I'm listening to my husband's call. But that's an aside. Something that I noticed for myself, my husband, I joke sometimes, I'm like, you should have this company, because he does such a good job of prioritizing his sleep, prioritizing his own care, making sure that he has time to decompress. And I, especially last year, would find myself being resentful that he was taking 30 minutes to watch a YouTube video on a topic that was interesting to him, or that he was allowing himself to sleep in. And for a little bit, I felt like that meant that I needed to do more or I needed to step up. But really, I was just jealous. I was resentful that he felt like it was okay and he felt that he was allowed to do those things. And so what I ended up just needing to do is, oh, I could give myself permission to listen to a podcast for 30 minutes and not have to be multitasking. I could give myself permission to sleep in instead of feeling like I have to be up. So in general, I find that like those jealousy, those sticking points are often places where we need to give ourselves permission to do something, but we don't feel brave enough to do it yet.
That's a great point. So, any idea how we can bypass if we realize, oh, this person is triggering to me because it seems like this person can just drop whatever he or she is doing, they are doing, and just leave while I can't. I'm stuck right here. So that sense of jealousy is triggering. So once people recognize that, what would be a good way to bring them back and really just focus on themselves rather than seeing what other people are doing?
Yeah. There's a couple ways that we could take this. So I got to write a piece for the Vida blog, and I talked about the two types of self-care that you need at work: proactive self-care and responsive or reactive self-care. And proactive self-care could be, I know that I'm going to see this person and I'm going to feel triggered or dysregulated. So I'm going to put a practice in place that I do before or after I engage with them. And this could be like for a manager too. Like, you know, your manager gets under your skin because they get to jet set and traipse around to do everything, and they don't worry about how that impacts the rest of their team. You can also have responsive practices that are things where, I'll use the manager example again. Your boss says something that kind of comes at you sideways and it's 10 a.m. and you still have to get through the rest of the day. Responsive practices are these short and sweet practices that you can do that ground you, that get you back to center so that you can address it from a productive way. So that might be something to consider, is how can I build some proactive or some responsive practices around this person or my interactions with this person to support myself. The other thing, and this is the coach in me, is I'm really curious, is it true that you actually are stuck there? And what are other possibilities? Or if I'm jealous because that person gets to leave work early to pick up their kids, is there a way that I could advocate for more flexibility in my day? Like, is it really true that I'm stuck? My dog says hello.
Oh, hi.
Sorry,
That's
I think a package just came. And this isn't to not admit that there are like systemic and structural realities that can really be getting in the way. But I find for myself, oftentimes there's more options that are available to me, but sometimes they involve me advocating for myself or asking a question or thinking in ways that I'm just not used to thinking about. So yeah, I'll stop there.
good. I feel these are very useful tips, especially we want to challenge our thoughts sometimes and question the reality we think we're in. Is it really the reality, or is it all in our heads? And what can we do about it instead of feeling stuck? So we're talking about so much great things here, so much great information here today. And I know our audiences have questions for you, and I already took down a couple. So right now, if anyone else has questions, please feel free to use the chat function to write down your question for Taylor, and she can answer those for you. And also, I want to remind everybody, stick to the end because we are giving away a copy of Taylor's book, Inner Workouts. So I hope you are the lucky winner. Okay, So, Taylor, before we answer questions, I want to make sure people know where to find you. Where can people go to learn more about you and your work and stay connected with you?
Yeah. So you can go to innerworkout.co, not .com. And there's a button right at the top to take the free self-care assessment. And there's also a button to get the Inner Workout book. You can also sign up for our newsletter, listen to our podcast, all there. I also have a personal website, taylorelise.com, that links to all of the things that I do outside of Inner Workout, because I do a lot. I'm a multi-hyphenate, as they say.
Got it. Thank you. And questions from our audience. I'm going to start with Allie's question. Allie says, I have a quick question. What are some examples of self-talk / reframe that's helpful for you? I find myself being mean and negative talk, especially if I don't get to my self-care or binge watch shows, and it doesn't relax me.
That's really relatable.
Yeah.
So I really like some of the techniques from acceptance and commitment therapy that really are just about realizing that we are not our thoughts and putting some distance between them. So one of the tools that can be nice is you're having the thought, you're like, I'm bad at my job, for example. When you just say I'm bad at my job, you feel really close to it and it feels like it has to be true. But then you can say, I'm having the thought that I'm bad at my job. And that's kind of like taking a step back. You realize like, okay, I'm not automatically bad at my job, but I am having the thought that I'm bad at my job. That's a little bit of distance. And then you can go even further back and say, I notice I'm having the thought that I'm bad at my job. And that puts you in your observer mode. So it's like, oh, somewhere down there, I'm looking down and I see, oh, there's a thought that I'm bad at my job. So that's one thing that you can use. I also really like the CCC, which is a version of cognitive behavioral therapy. Catch the thought. So again, a way of noticing what the thought is. Check the thought. Is this true? Is this helpful? Is this something that I would say to my best friend? And then change the thought to something that is more useful. So it could be catch the thought, I'm bad at my job, check it. And that's actually not objectively true. You could probably get more specific. And it's probably that, not that you're bad at your job, but it's, I'm struggling to use this new software. So you're getting specific. It's not true that I'm generally bad at my job, but maybe you know what's actually going on beneath the surface. And then you change it to, I'm capable of learning new things, or I've learned something new before, I could do it again. Any number of thoughts, but you can change it to something that's more useful. And that doesn't have to take a lot of time. I also have another resource, and that you can find on my website, called Tune In, but it's a whole collection about changing the conversation with yourself. It's a deck of cards, a workbook, and a journal.
I love that, changing the dialogue, right? The conversation with yourself. And also, sometimes we buy into these thoughts. It's almost like the more painful it is, the more we're embracing these thoughts. So if you catch yourself with that behavior, it's time to dig deeper. There's always something going on underneath, and be aware when we tend to look for things to validate the negative thoughts. It's almost like, oh, so-and-so doesn't like me. And then it becomes, people generally don't like me. And then you kind of look for that, right? And if people didn't smile at you, and then that validates your thought, look, people just don't want to be friends with me. But is that really true? So sometimes we need to challenge these thoughts. So I love to catch the thoughts, check the thoughts, and change the thoughts. Good.
Yeah.
Thank you for asking that question. And Ali, my bad if I butchered your name. So moving on to Melissa. Melissa said, do you have examples of what to do in each dimension in your book. Example, if we're feeling the need, if we are feeling we need bliss, some things to do for that step and stage.
Yeah. So that's like, so the whole first part, there's two parts of the book. The first part of the book is kind of reframing self-care, busting some myths about self-care, looking at self-care in the context of community care. And then the second half of the book encourages you to take the take care assessment, and then it's choose your own adventure. So there's a chapter for each dimension of well-being, and then there's little sub chapters for each sub-dimension, and you've got like songs for each dimension of well-being, recommended practices. There's like a million journaling prompts. So it's really, really practical.
Good. And I'm seeing that someone is asking about your contact information. And I believe Jillian just sent the Inner Workout website again.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, so let me make sure everybody has this.
I'm adding.
Everyone. Oh, whoops. Sorry, I just copy and pasted the wrong. That was the question I got, but this is the website. Okay, there you go. Okay, good. And Melissa says, that's awesome. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Melissa, for asking that question. And so audiences, you still have time. Please put questions in the chat if you have any for Taylor. And also, I want to let everybody know, if you're interested in learning more about Vida and learning more about coaching, we do offer free consultation. So please reach out. And Jillian, my colleague, will put a link in the chat to let you know how you can schedule a free consultation and get to know Vida more. Okay. Book a free consultation with Vida. So see the chat. Any other questions? If you want to unmute yourself, feel free. Or if you already read Inner Workout, if you are Taylor's fan, you just want to say hello, feel free to do that as well. And we will be giving away Taylor's book very quickly. Okay, so here's another question. Angel, I got your question. So Angel wants to know, Taylor, healing, reframing, meditating, etc. at times is exhausting. I just want to be, Any suggestions, Taylor?
Yeah, that's so real. There's a lot of people who are, it can be exhausting. And that when I was talking about those two people, like this, the self-aware overachiever and the strong friend, you can get really bogged down when you're like trying to overachieve personal development. And so that might be your sign to like prioritize joy. And instead of being like, what is the way that I can heal everything? What would be the most fun way for me to move my body? Right now, for me, that's like cardio boxing. What would be the most fun way to reflect? And maybe you start reflecting by like writing poetry, or you write a song about what happened this week. What would be the most fun way for me to spend time with my thoughts? Like for me, I got diagnosed with ADHD about a year ago, and I've been really thinking about like meditation and stillness in my relationship to that, because it's something that I've struggled with. And so now, like, I will allow myself to have some free movement and meditation, or I might do like an embodied dance practice. And again, like for you, if you're feeling bogged down and feeling like it's heavy, maybe there's some ways to lighten it up and focus on the joy and the play and the fun of it, which so many of us, we need more of that. Yeah, so that would be my recommendation.
Good. By the way, Angel says, oh my God, I love your suggestions. Thank you so much, Taylor. Angel sent her love to me, and so I want to send it to you. Thank you, Angel. And Wanda says you are answering my question. Okay, so Wanda, I'm going to skip your question. I believe Emily asked, what are some ways to protect your energy from energy vampires? The ones who are negative all the time, or coworkers who are just negative. I love that, energy vampire.
This is a good question. So the first thing is like, what level of control, what's in your control in how much you engage with them? So like, if you're choosing to go out to lunch with these people, maybe you don't choose to go out to lunch with them anymore. But if you're working with them on a project and you have to, it could be that you do something afterwards that's energizing. Maybe it's like you love writing your company's newsletter, or you love working with a mentee and you try and schedule that after you have to hang out with this draining coworker to boost yourself up. It also could be like less the person and more that there needs to be some clarity. So perhaps you find that you're like gossiping a lot with them, and that's not something that gives you energy. So you can just kind of like politely start shifting the conversation or not engaging when they're saying bad things about this other coworker, and instead bring up something that is more interesting. Like, you know, that you're both watching Succession. And so you spend your time over lunch thinking about what's going to happen in the final 2 episodes of the season or something like that. Also, sometimes people are draining our energy because we allow them to. And I always say that the best time to set boundaries is at the beginning of a relationship. The second best time to set boundaries is now. So notice like what exactly about engaging with them is draining. And maybe it's because they're expecting an unreasonable timeline for something. And so you need to sit down and have a conversation and say, okay, I've noticed that these type of last minute requests are getting more frequent. Here's how it's impacting me. Tell me more about what's happening in your part of the process to make these last minute, and how can we reconfigure this so we get to a better place. So without having a lot of context, that it's hard to like specifically answer that, but hopefully that gives you some starting points.
I agree. Communication is the key here, and protect your boundaries and set that boundary early on. By the way, that question came from Ali O. So Ali O, thank you for that great question about the energy vampires. Now, Emily says, love the book. What was your biggest lesson learned in the process of writing and launching your book?
Community care. I think that self-care is already hard. Like, you asked me some great questions, Peggy, about why it's hard for us to practice self-care. But I think that for most of us who were raised in our culture, which is a pretty individualist culture, I talk about in the book, it's actually like the most individualist culture in the world. It's easier for us to engage. I'm laughing because my husband just realized people
I see
can see him in
him.
the mirror.
Please say hi
Yeah.
to him for us.
I'll tell him when we get off. So when in an individualist culture, it's easier for us to engage with self-care often than it is to engage with community care and to ask for help and to say what we need. And this process like really stretched me. It forced me to advocate for myself and to ask for favors and to ask for support and to state what I needed, both personally and professionally. And I was just so delighted, humbled at all of the feelings by how people in my community showed up for me. And it just kept being a lesson in the beauty of receiving. I do a lot of giving and community care, but there's always so much room for me to grow in receiving community care.
Love that. Thank you. Yes, I want to reiterate the importance of asking for support. You don't have to do these things alone. People want to help you succeed. That's something we want to believe in. So speak up and ask. Yeah. Thank you so much, Taylor. Thank you so much, everyone. Right now, let's give away the book. I think that will make someone's day even better. So Julian is going to help us through this process. So are we ready?
Yeah, sounds good. So what we're going to do is we'll randomly select someone, whoever we do choose. If you can send me a message with your email address so that we can get in contact with you. But yeah, right now, what I'm going to have you do, Peggy, is just tell me when I should pause. So just tell me when to stop.
All right. Let's stop here.
Okay. It's Pandy McVeigh.
Is Pandy on the
on
line?
Yes, I believe
We want to make
so.
sure you're on the line.
I'm on the line.
Oh, yay!
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm going to reach out to you, but be sure to just send me an email so we can get that information. And I'll pass it back over to Peggy. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Julian. And congrats again, Pandy. And so Taylor, to wrap things up, anything else you want to tell everyone before you go?
I think the big thing that I want to leave you with is that, especially like coming back to this topic of the interconnectedness of self-care and work, is that there are more opportunities for you to care for yourself throughout your workday and throughout your career than you might initially think. So for some of you, your starting point is going to be listening within and learning how to listen to your body, listen to your thoughts, listen to yourself in these different dimensions of well-being. And that's going to be your work for a while. I was telling people before we logged on the Vida team that I just started speech therapy because I use my voice a lot, and apparently I wasn't using it as efficiently as I could. And I was in speech therapy yesterday, and I was supposed to be feeling buzzing on my lips. And I was like, I've never felt buzzing on my lips before. And so it was hard to be like, wait, is this right? Is this happening? It's a new type of listening that I haven't been engaged with before. So for some of you, it might feel like me trying to figure out the buzzing on my lips, where it's going to take a little bit more work and effort up front just for you to hear from yourself. And I want you to celebrate every single time you notice something that is happening in that conversation. For others of you, you're hearing stuff, but you're struggling to have that loving response. And that operative word there is loving, not out of obligation, not to beat yourself up. Loving response. And that's where your work is, to think, okay, with the time that I have, with the resources that I have, what can I give myself today? So some of you, it's the listening, some of it's the loving response. And just remember that anything that you can do with the time and resources that you have is better than doing nothing.
I can't agree more. Thank you so much, Taylor. And thank you everyone for joining us today. We will send a replay along with all the information that you might find helpful. And thank you. And it's my pleasure. Again, Taylor, I am so happy that we met and that you're also a fellow yogi. And I wish you all the best. Please keep in touch.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Take care.